Why did I build this huge planer sled? And some of y'all might even be asking why build a sled at all and what it's used for. What's up, y'all? I'm Andy. This is Epeius Garage, and today I'm going to answer both those questions. Oh, hold on.
I need a better weapon.
Got him. All right, let's get to it, shall we? All right, what is a planer sled? If you have a board that is cupped, warped, or some type of defect where it's not perfectly flat, then a joiner is by far your best choice or best option. But if you're like me and you're in a small space, I'm in a 2-car garage that I share with my wife's car, you may not have room for a joiner. So this is where a sled comes into play and is a great option as long as you have a planer. If you run a warped or cupped board through your planer as is, it's going to come out a little bit thinner, a little bit smoother, and still warped and cupped. That's the way it is. And the reason for this is actually because your planer, as it goes through, is putting a lot of pressure on that board, and it pushes it out and it runs it through, and it's not actually taking any of that off. So when it comes out, the warp comes out, the cup comes back, and it's just the way it was. With a sled though, you can take the board, you can set it on the sled, you can put shims or little wedges on all the high spots. So if you have a spot that's coming up on the end, you can put wedges underneath that to keep it from being pushed down. So that way when it goes through your planer, it's just going to slowly start shaving that off instead of pushing it down and making it flat with the bottom and then coming out the same, if that makes any sense at all. I don't even know if I'm explaining this well. Once you go through and you see that you have a perfectly flat board, and generally what I do is I take a pencil and I mark it every time I run it through so I can see that the whole board's been totally flattened. Now you can take it off your sled, you can flip the board over, and you can run it through your planer as is because it has a flat edge and it's not going to be pushing it down anywhere. I mean, it's going to push it down, but it's not going to push any of the defects out. The defects that are there are already up, and it's just going to slowly take them down. Just make sure you don't put your planer too low. Keep it high, and slow increments, move your planer down as you go through, and then eventually you're going to have a perfectly flat board. Now, why did I need one? That might be the question. If you watched my last video, it'll be linked below. I had to make a custom tabletop for a customer. It was a commission job. They asked if I could do it. I explained it in the other video. If you want to watch that, I give all the details in that one. In that video, I had some issues with the boards that needed to be addressed. They had some defects, so I needed a sled. And those boards were fairly long and large. That's why I needed the large sled. I hope you liked the video, and I really hope maybe it helps you in some way or fashion. This sled is totally down, dirty, quick sled. There are a lot more fancy sleds out there. At the end of the video, if you stay tuned and watch it all, I do give a really good channel where he gives an excellent sled that you can make yourself if you have time to make you a sled for your shop. You don't need one this long generally, at least I don't. I'm probably going to cut this down some and discard half of it just so that I don't have this monstrosity in my already packed full little shop. But anyways, the link to all these videos will be in the description if you're wanting to watch those. Check it out.
Now I know my planer is a 13 inch, so I decided to make the sled 12 and 5/8 inch wide out of 3/4 inch plywood. I need the entire length of the board plus some, and I did not have a straight edge over 8 foot to cut this my normal method with a circular saw. So I got my boy Jackson to help me do this as safely as possible. I do not recommend doing this without help. I felt like the 8-foot plywood would be too flimsy, and I needed a straight reference point in order to properly shim up the workpiece. After thinking of different options, I decided to make dados and insert pieces of pine along the length to add support, kind of like rails to slide on. It made it more like a sled, to be honest with you. The plywood was not quite long enough, so I had to add an extension piece so the entire board would fit on the sled. For the end stopper piece, I cut an 1.5 inch strip of plywood, and this is just a stopper for the board so it's not pushed off the board when it's going through the planer. I then edge jointed my pine rail boards to ensure they were as flat as possible. Then I cut the rails into 1.5-inch strips. Next, I set up my dado stack and board to make the dados. I did a couple practice runs to make sure everything was good before making the actual cuts on the sled piece. The first cuts were snug, so instead of widening the actual dado, I just ran the rail strips through the planer to make them thinner. I thought that would be easier. In order to make the extension work on the sled, I had to cut back the rail strips and then measure the length I needed for the end with the extension in order to make sure it was supported well enough. The next step was drilling my holes. I drilled them about 1 foot apart with a countersink. What I did first is I drilled a kind of pilot hole on the inside, and then I came back on the outside, flipped it over with a countersink bit, so they were countersunk on the top side, if that makes any sense. After I got all my holes drilled, I was ready for the glue up. I used Titebond 2, applied the boards, and then clamped them in. While the boards were clamped, I started applying 1.25-inch screws. And the main reason for the screws is I just didn't want to wait for the glue to dry. That's the main reason. Glue probably would have been plenty by itself in this application, but I wanted to keep moving.
Moment of truth. I've got everything cinched down, glued, screwed. It's all good, so I'm going to check the level. It's good. I've got these little shims here that I've shown many times. I'm going to check this is a slight gap. So there's a little bit of gap, so it's off. 1/16 of an inch does not go in. However, 32nd does slide in, so it's a 32nd off. I can live with that. I think I figured out which side's the most convex. Now, I'm not quite done with the sled yet. I'm going to go ahead, add the stopper at the front, and I'm going to put some non-skid, hold on. Stuff works good. You know, you put it in your kitchen cabinets and stuff. I use it to sand items on and other stuff, but it works really good. Keep the board stiff, and then I'll shim it up. We'll try it out.
And the stopper was really easy. Just took that 1.5-inch piece. I put some glue on it and a couple screws right on the end of the board as it was clamped. Real easy. Here you can see the warp. All I'm going to do is shim that up really well so it can't be pushed down in the planer. The other end was opposite of this end, so it was warped. Alright, several things you want to do before running it through your planer. First, shim all the high sides with wood wedge shims. I ended up getting some at Lowe's. They worked great. You may have to cut them to fit, and that's fine. 2, start the height of the planer way high. You may have to push it through first few times, but you do not want to hit a high spot unexpectedly further down the board. 3, it's also good practice to mark the entire face of the board that you're planing with a pencil, so you can see what is being removed and when it's completely flat. And then finally, when it's flat on that side, you can take it off the sled and flip it over, but the other 2 tips I mentioned still apply. Start high and mark with a pencil. And a perfect example where you can see the pencil marks are slowly going away, and that is removing the uneven parts.
What do I have to say about my sled? Well, it got the job done. I will say that. It most definitely got the job done. It was quick and easy to make. I needed this in a pinch, had a project to do, needed to get these done. I didn't want the customer waiting forever. So I just needed something quick. Well, I keep this around. Probably not. The thing's huge and bulky. It's 8 foot 3 inches long. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'll probably take it apart, or I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, to be honest with you. I rarely have to do boards this big, but I guess when you do have to, it's nice to have something, but it takes up a lot of space. I will say that Brian Ward did a really good video on a sled if you're looking to make a sled. If you're needing a quick one in a pinch, hey, this one worked. But if you're looking for one, keep around your shop, and you got a place for it to use over and over, and maybe not this big, check out Brian Ward's video. I'll link him in the description. But really cool sled, really cool design. I may end up making one like his one day. Ultimately though, really, a joiner would have made this a lot better. One day I will have a shop. The next house we buy, is my only stipulation I told the wife, is I have to have a shop. Either I have to be able to build a shop or I have to have a shop already there. One day. But anyways, that's it. Quick, easy project. Maybe it'll help you if you're in a pinch and you need to get some boards unwarped or uncupped. It worked. I'll see y'all later.